right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we got an interesting one for you guys. We're going to be talking about Glenn Danzig's Death Rider in the House of Vampires. Yeah, we covered his first film, Veronica, last year, and it was a fun movie to talk about. Not exactly what we would call necessarily specifically a good movie, but it was fun to watch and fun to talk about and fun to get into our whole puzzle pieces thing with. And so when I heard that he had a new movie coming out, I was certainly interested, and it turned out that frequent co-host of the show, Joe Black, was also really excited about it and was planning a trip to Las Vegas to come see the first showing of it. Turned out he was also able to see it in LA before he came to Vegas, but still I got to hang out with Joe Black for the first time here in Las Vegas. We went to the screening, and then we ended up recording this episode, which, by the way, happens to be the 200th episode of Piecing It Together. Now, with the caveat that there's actually like 290-something episodes if you count all of the special episodes, the breaking it apart, the missing pieces, the director follow-ups, the all kinds of other stuff that I've put into the feed. There's a lot more than 200. But this, as far as the main numbered episodes go, it's episode 200. How amazing is that? So yeah, thank you everybody who's been with us either from the beginning or new listeners or whatever. I just really appreciate that you're out there listening. So as always, I'm going to tell you the whole spiel about how you should be subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Pocket Casts, on Good Pods, on all the different podcast apps. Wherever you're listening right now, you could subscribe right there. So thank you for everyone who's subscribed. If you're not subscribed, make sure to get subscribed. You could also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or Good Pods. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show and everything else going on in the world of movies. So definitely do that. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being with me. However long you've been listening, if you are new to the show, that means there's like 200 or however many episodes left to go back and check out. So check out the old episodes, share the show with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and let's talk about Death Rider in the House of Vampires. All right, Joe Black is back with us on the podcast. We got a fun one coming up here. Joe, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Just working 14-hour days and trying to sleep in between.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get it in where you could get it. And I'm sure you're still probably exhausted from your trip to Vegas to see this movie with me, huh?
No, I loved it, actually. I loved the whole trip. It was great to finally get to like hang out with you. We've only met one time in person for a brief moment, but actually like hang out, and you took me to that great tapas place, which I'd been thinking about all weekend. And then my wife and I, we've just been going nonstop all year. So it was a nice little day and a half getaway for us. We gambled some money away and she had some time in the pool. It was a lovely, lovely trip.
So Joe, was this movie Death Rider in the House of Vampires? I take it you're a big Danzig fan. Is that why this was a big deal for you?
Yeah, huge Danzig fan, actually. Big Danzig fan. High school, like everybody was, like I went to an arts high school, so everybody was into like punk music and everything. And
sure.
I couldn't really get into any of them, like Sex Pistols and Rancid was actually big back then too.
Yeah,
but like,
sounds about right.
Yeah, like I had a respect for them. I thought they were really cool. I appreciated what punk was. But the Misfits were the only ones that really got to me because they had melody. You know what I mean? Like I really liked what Danzig was doing, and and I in some circles I'm too afraid to admit this, but I really liked the Michael Graves era too.
Yeah.
But Danzig I've always appreciated is just a guy who, I mean, when he started the Misfits, he also started the fan club, and he, nobody would record their album, so he built a recording studio and recorded their first album, and then nobody would buy the album, so he's like, I'll make my own label then, and released it himself, then made his own fan club and made all his own merch for his fan club, and you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I've just you know and if anyone's heard me on here, they know how much I love that kind of like I'm just gonna do it myself. You
Sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And his way. And once punk became its own brand, he dipped out. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I love that about him too. He's like, I'm getting better. The scene is getting repetitive. It's time to move on.
Mhm.
So anytime he pops up, like I always make it a point to seek out whatever that new Danzig jam is, if you will.
Sure, sure.
Mm.
And this movie might seem like for the regular listeners like a strange one to dedicate an episode to. But we did do Veronica last year, which was it's Veronica. It's what it is. It's a Glenn
Yeah.
Danzig's first movie and is it's wild for what it is, but I was looking forward to this because I had fun talking about that movie, even if the movie is a bit of a mixed bag. I thought it would be fun to check out whatever he did next, and that's what we got now. So before we get into the puzzle pieces, I do want to mention something real quick, and you might not be aware of this, Joe, but do you know what this episode is?
No.
It's the 200th episode of Piecing It Together.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Imagine that. Celebrating
Wow.
200 episodes with Death Rider and the House of Vampires.
Wow, that's amazing. Why do I feel like what was the 100th episode?
Actually, I did like a special bonus episode for episode 100 where Gina interviewed me about like my music career and stuff.
Ooh.
So
I
yeah,
haven't heard that one yet.
yeah, no, that was fun. That was fun. I was gonna do something special this time around, but I was like, you know what? Death Rider's coming up. I think it fits.
I think that's wonderful. I think that
Yeah.
that's a bold statement, and
Hmm.
in a time of movies right now where everything is either like trying way too hard to be different and or is like movies are also just kind of finding out how to be like, conventional again. Like
Sure.
I love
Yeah.
it. Like throw in, Danzig. That's the perfect anecdote to what's going on right now.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on 200 episodes. That's insane.
Hey, thank you so much, man, and thank you for being here for it. It's awesome. But
Um,
let's start jumping into some pieces here for this movie, this crazy movie. What do you got for your first piece?
Okay, my first piece is a half cheat because so like found out about the screening how it was going to open in Vegas a week before LA. So immediately David and I we collaborated and I was like I'm going to come out and see it a week early. But then like Friday, a couple days later, I found out that the LA premiere was actually the night before
Hmm.
its release in Vegas. So I went. I couldn't wait. I
Yeah.
went to the premiere, and I got to bump into Danzig and Danny Trejo, and I got a cool poster. But watching the movie at the beginning, the scene with Danny Trejo, the very opening, I was like immediately, I was like, oh, he's definitely doing a Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the
Hmm.
Eli Wallach Clint Eastwood relationship for sure.
Sure.
Like the taunting kind of whatever. I call it a bit of a cheat because Danzig did a Q&A afterward where he talked about that, how like the opening was his homage to Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Sure. Well, and I think it needs to be in the conversation though. I think spaghetti westerns in general need to be in the conversation. I think the funny thing about what Danzig seems to be doing here is, with the spaghetti western kind of like copying, what the western is, and then it kind of comes back around full circle with Glenn Danzig copying the spaghetti western, and
Right.
it kind of like degrades a further level, like it turns it into a totally different thing. But it's through that weird prism, kind of.
Right. No, well, he said too, like, yeah, he was like, it's all about my love for spaghetti westerns, and the score is Ennio Morricone meets Link Ray. He was saying
Sure.
all this, but like what you can tell from watching the movie is that Danzig doesn't really like know a lot about movies. Like, and not
Mm,
I don't mean about making them, but like it would be like if I tried to make music. You know what I mean? Like as much as I love
sure.
music, I don't know jack shit about music. And like,
Mhm.
he's busting out all the classics. Like at the end of the Q&A, they asked him, "What's your favorite Western?" And he was like, "Once Upon a Time in the West." And it's like, okay, you
Mm,
know what I mean? So like, he's just playing a hits.
sure.
But Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, among other spaghetti westerns for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go into my first puzzle piece here, and this one kind of initially right from the trailer, I was like, oh, it seems like this is kind of the direction that he's going to be going. And I feel like it definitely is the direction he was going. And that's Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996. Maybe a little more specifically, it's direct-to-video sequels, which I don't know if I've ever actually seen any of. I see you seem to be excited about
that. Was one
sequels.
of my pieces. It was 3.
Okay.
From Dusk Till Dawn 3.
Yeah.
The Hangman's Daughter, because that's the Western.
Yeah, that's like the straight up Western one. Yeah, I think I did see that one. Like, I'm pretty sure I rented both of the sequels and watched them back to back one, drunken or stone night.
Yeah, they came out like same time, and they were both shot at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Dwayne Whitaker I'm actually friends with both of them. Man, that's funny. My buddies Dwayne Whitaker and Scott Spiegel wrote From Dusk Till Dawn 2. And Dwayne is in that one, and they shot simultaneously in South Africa, I believe, is where they shot those movies.
Okay.
I didn't care for 3 personally, but it definitely is more of a piece for this movie for sure.
Sure, absolutely.
What I really like about the twist on it that Danzig did was, everybody knows at least the first From Dusk Till Dawn is a strip club full of vampire strippers or whatever. Absolutely. I like that this movie does the reverse, where this is a brothel for vampires. Like, and the women who get brought in are human, so that they can have their sexual desires and feast on them. Sure. Like, that's I thought that was a cute little reverse engineering.
Yeah, I think that is a fun. I struggle to say unique, because I mean it's clearly like the same kind of a thing, but I mean it is a little bit of a spin on the idea.
Right. Like I said, it's just kind of a reverse engineering. You know what I mean? It's like that joke that I messaged to you earlier when I said, let's do a Sparks cover band called Scraps. Like, it's like, it's literally, you know what I mean? It's just a mirror. Yeah. But it worked for me. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was a fun little reveal to see Fred Armisen, in his cameo, take a bite out of some innocent. Like, that was funny.
Yeah, it was fun. All right, well, I'll go to my next piece then, and I'm going to stay in 1996 with the Tales from the Crypt movie Bordello of Blood, starring Dennis Miller, and a brothel run by vampires, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. I didn't know that until I looked it up just now for my puzzle pieces, but wow, that's crazy.
Well, that whole show was theirs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I didn't realize, because that movie, like those movies, they just kind of just went into the dumps. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. And so it's like kind of just funny to think that they're still involved with that stuff. But yeah, I started to rewatch it actually the other day, because I remember I actually liked it at the time as a 16-year-old, because I mean, come on, gore and boobs and it's what it is. The movie is what it is. I was surprised though that it had some pretty fun gore effects, like practical gore effects and stuff like that. And it did kind of go there, at least in that opening setup. The opening scene had a lot of really fun, like faces inflating with blood and eyes popping and whatnot. Some of that was fun. And there was a couple of fun scenes like that in this movie too, in Death Rider, when they pour the liquid, what was it? Liquid metal or something?
Liquid silver.
Liquid silver, that's right, into the vampires' throats. So yeah, there's some fun comparisons to be made there.
Yeah, Bordello Blood. I saw both that and Demon Knight when I was a kid, and I didn't like Bordello Blood as a kid. I think I just didn't like that. Spoilers, if you see it, that Dennis Miller dies at the end, like that last final twist in the car. That she's like, I was like, even as a kid, I was like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, I always hated endings like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought they were so lame and cheap. But Demon Knight I liked way more, but that's because I've always just been a fool for Billy Zane.
Of course, he's the man.
Getting to see him play like a redneck genie of sorts, like they really knew what I wanted when I was a kid.
Sure.
Well, you talked about like the death, the liquid silver, and creativity. I guess I'll do one of my other puzzle pieces that with a similar, like the connection is the deaths. Is, have you ever seen the John Landis film Innocent Blood?
No, I haven't even heard of that one.
It's interesting. Like, I'm a huge John Landis fan, for better or worse. Like, I love all of his films except for Oscar. I used to say I love all of his films except for Oscar and Innocent Blood, because when I saw it when I was younger, I just thought it was awful. It's but when it came out on Blu-ray, and I rewatched it as an adult now who could appreciate things like a vampire mobster movie. It was terrific. And that's what it is. It's a gangster movie with vampires.
Okay.
And Don Rickles is like the henchman to this gangster, right? Played by Robert Loggia.
Okay.
Who he wants to be a vampire because he's like, oh, he's like the head gangster, but he's like, oh, that'll make me the most powerful man in the world. But like Don Rickles, he like kind of like tests his vampire powers. He drinks from Don Rickles first, who's like his little weasel, right?
Nice.
And there's this brilliant scene in the movie where Don Rickles is in a hospital bed because, like, of course, people find him like, oh, we got to save his life, but he's in the hospital bed, and he wakes up and he's a fucking vampire. And the nurse who's in his room is like got her back to him, and he's like going toward her, and he's gonna bite her. But at the last second, she opens up the blinds of her of the room, and sunlight comes in, and he fucking right?
Yeah.
But it's actually like terrifying because he doesn't just like poof into smoke. He literally like cracks and breaks open and turns to ash slowly, and like a couple of orderlies come in not knowing what's going on, and they try to like push him, like pin him to the bed, but his arms end up ripping off because of it. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's how the deaths are in Death Rider. Like it like the deaths, every single one of them, whether it's a stake in the heart or drinking silver or whatever, or the son cooking what's her name, Mia, whatever her name is. It is that slow, like we almost get to like relish in it, like where they like their skin starts to crack and it ashes up, and then they begin to break open, and they incinerate.
It's a fun effect for sure.
Yeah, and somehow it works every time, and literally that's the whole second half of the movie.
Yeah,
it's just that happening a lot, and it worked for me. But yeah, Innocent Blood, and one of the main reasons I bring it up is just because like I really recommend it to people. It's like it was his follow-up to Oscar, if I'm not mistaken, and it's one that like I regret all the years of shit talking because it's actually like brutal and really funny. If you like John Landis.
I'm gonna have to watch that for sure. I just watched Three Amigos for the first time since I was a kid, just a few weeks ago, and so good.
So good. My wife and I actually on our drive home from Vegas, we like to play car games, and she was like, the game she wanted to play, she's like, okay, I'm gonna name a movie that's getting remade, and we have to cast it. Okay. And we just watched Three Amigos recently as well, so she said Three Amigos, and I think that if I'm remembering correctly, the three we came up with was Danny McBride as Steve Martin, which is a different take, you know what I mean? Sure. But like comedy's different now, and I think that he's proven himself to be the good dumb leader. Sure. I'd rather see him do that than Will Ferrell. And then the Channing Tatum is who we had for Dusty.
Okay, I can see that.
And then for Ned, we kind of were like trying to figure it out, but I think we landed on Jay Baruchel.
I could see that. Jay Baruchel doesn't do too much lately, though.
Right. But here's the thing. This is why I married her. My wife, last minute, throws in this. She goes, this all works as long as Benicio del Toro plays El Guapo.
Sure.
Yeah. And I almost wrecked the car because I want to see that movie.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Absolutely. Well, I'll go to another piece here. I'm going to go with Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. The influence of classic horror films, Hammer horror films, filtered through what's meant to be a comedy or make us laugh, or at least it seems like it. It's hard to tell exactly with Danzig what his intentions are for making it, but I have to imagine he's in on the joke to a degree and is trying to make us laugh with all this. And so, yeah, using those classic horror movies, and especially the, what's his name, Julian Sands, Count Holiday. I mean, that is like classic, like that kind of like Hammer horror stuff.
He took it so seriously because he was part of that Q&A afterward at the premiere that I saw, and he was like, when I got the script, I thought the character was so wonderfully written and so interesting, and I had discussions, and when I had Glenn Danzig was directing it as well, I loved the Misfits, and I saw Tonight for the first time, and I could not be prouder of what we accomplished.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, good for you, dude, because like that's the big question. Is it a joke? You know what I mean? And I don't know if it's a joke as much as Danzig is just like gleefully being an asshole.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? He's just having a ball. Like that's what I think it is. You know
Which
what I mean?
is still not taking it serious. You know, it's
sure.
It's still different from a serious take on the subject matter.
Sure. Like more than anything, you get the idea that this is just a bunch of buddies who got together just to, be assholes for a couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
Especially every time Danzig is on screen. He's eating it up every time he's on that screen.
He's the best actor in the whole thing. Sorry, Devon Sawa. But he really is. I've been saying it for years that The Watchmen, the movie, the Zack Snyder, I use movie in quotes because, but take that, Chad. But I've always said that I wanted Glenn Danzig to play Rorschach.
Yeah,
because he is Rorschach. He's short, he's ugly, he's an anarchist Republican, and he'll fuck you up. And this movie proves that he can act. So.
Oh man, I want to see that version of that. That's awesome.
The beauty is it's never too late. I saw The Irishman. Danzig could play Rorschach for another 20 years as long as we get the same computer face thingy.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do it. Well, do you have any other puzzle pieces?
I do. I saved my favorite one for last.
Okay.
So I hate Westerns. Not as much as I used to, but they annoy the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's like 3 different stories you can tell, and they're kind of like puritanical, like, propaganda kind of. I just don't like them. Like, but there is a few years ago, 7 years ago, I made a Western called Hate Horses, and I did it because I don't like Westerns, and I was like, well, let me try to make one. And in doing like pre-production for that movie, I watched 200 Westerns. Like
that's a lot of Westerns.
For 6 months, I just had Westerns on a loop whenever I was home. I didn't like sit down and actively watch all of them, you know what I mean? But if one caught my attention. But the one Western that I've always been intrigued by my whole life is a film my dad showed me when I was very young called Zachariah. And Zachariah is a movie from 1968, and it was a bunch of Southern rockers who got together, like Country Joe and the Fish and the James Gang and a handful of others, and they made a Western. And they called it an electric Western. And the tagline is the first electric Western. And it's your typical like Western story, and Don Johnson, I think it actually is his first film. He plays like the main character's best friend who betrays him. Huh. It's your typical Western story set in the Old West, but the rock bands are in it either as characters or they just pop up to play musical pieces for the score, but they're in the movie. So like they're in the middle of like a shootout in a saloon, and like Country Joe and the Fish are like rocking and rolling with their electric guitars and shit like that.
Huh.
It's a rock and roll fueled Western. And like I said, they called it the first electric Western, and then there was never another electric Western.
Sure.
Until Hate Horses, motherfucker.
Nice.
Because Hate Horses, we made the tagline the second electric Western.
Perfect.
But so Danzig, I mean, like I've got to assume that like he saw Zachariah and the idea of fusing his kind of rock and roll sensibilities with a Western, you know what I mean? That had to have been an influence on him for sure.
Didn't you tell me that during the Q&A he said that he had already like done or at least started the score? He said
he was pretty sure that he finished the score before he even had 20 pages written. And my first thought when he said that was, that script is more than 20 pages long.
Yeah.
Like
I can't imagine.
Yeah, but the score, what's so funny is like, I mean, you probably picked up on it more than me, but for me, I hear like 2 different pieces of music in that movie.
Right. Yeah.
But that opening 10 minutes where he's just playing that song on a loop, like I could listen to that for an hour.
Yeah.
Like I love that opening song. And then to go from 10 minutes of music with him walking around the desert to a random scene where he punches Danny Trejo and ties him up, to more walking with like quietness and music, and then the credit sequence has no music.
Amazing.
He's a genius.
By the way, yeah, that scene, I gotta say, at the end of the year, when we do our top 10 list, this movie will be nowhere near my top 10 list. But I always do at the end, me, Josh Bell, Jason Harris from Awesome Movie Year, we always do our top 10s, all 3 of us, and I always have them do 2 of their favorite scenes of the year. And spoiler alert, but those opening credits are probably going to be one of my favorite scenes. To have that credits. I'm not talking about the opening with the girl on the horse, but the actual titles,
Right.
with no music but just sound effects. For like 5 minutes of that is just one of the
Yeah.
weirdest things I've seen in a long time.
And like iMovie quality sound effects too,
Yes,
like the same like 15-second wind loop. This, yeah, that's good.
so good.
You just
Oh,
reminded me
man.
when you said like, how this is nowhere near in your top 10, but favorite scenes of the year. I don't know why it just popped in my head. Maybe it's because for over a year now I've felt bad for making you watch Southland Tales, but Entertainment Weekly, when they did their end of the year awards, the year that Southland Tales came out, they had a special category where they said, best scene in a terrible film. And the winner was the Justin Timberlake Killers
Nice.
musical sequence.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a good sequence.
Yeah, it is.
I'll go with one last piece, a pretty obvious one, but this movie, if you were to describe it to someone who doesn't really know what to expect from it, I think a pretty good description would be picture one of the fake trailers from Tarantino and Rodriguez's Grindhouse and spread it out into a whole movie. That's kind of what this movie is. So I'm going to say Grindhouse as a puzzle piece here, even though it's a pretty obvious thing for what is essentially a Grindhouse style movie. It's a pretty obvious thing to cite, but I just think it would have fit so well in that particular movie.
Absolutely. I still am waiting for Werewolf Women of the SS though.
Oh yeah.
Like more like when they were like, we're making Machete. I'm like, okay. Like,
yeah.
can
Well,
you pair it with-
Machete, it was a great idea. So
I like the second one
Yeah.
because they put my lady in it, the Lady Gaga.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, she had her own poster. I think it took them longer to print the poster than she had screen time in that movie. Bastard. Yeah, no, that's a great one. See, if somebody came to me like asking about the movie and they didn't know what to expect, I would just tell them don't watch it. Like I'd be like, if you, not because it's bad, you know what I mean? Like no, because it is what it is, and I don't think that if you're not ready, like if you don't know what you're about to get into, then you're not going to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
No, that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, even more than Verotica, because Verotica, what's cool about Verotica is that like there's a lot going on in that movie. And if you're not digging it, then like 30 minutes, every 30 minutes they change it up on you. You know what I mean? And the premises in Verotica are so outlandish, you know what I mean? Like the woman who has eyes for nipples, you know what I mean? Like we've seen vampires in the West before, as much as Danzig seems to think we haven't.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like that could be very dull right out of the get-go, but at least in Verotica there's shit in there that you're just like, if you're totally a novice to, you're just like, what,
Yeah.
But no, Death Riders is so funny because it's like he obviously figured out what he wants to do as a filmmaker, and as much as I love him, I mean, I maybe got one more of these in me. Like, you know what I mean? Like
you say that, but I feel like you'll keep watching them.
Well, of course, I'm nothing if not a liar. But like I'll give him the benefit of the doubt one more time with one of these. What would be so dope though is if the next movie comes out, it's just like this epically well-made movie. Like you know what I mean? Like we're talking like early Scorsese like era, like Mean Streets level, where you're just like, where did this come from? Yeah. Who gave him a dolly? He knows how to use one of these. That'd be so cool.
I'm ready for it. I'm definitely ready for it.
I'm ready for Devon Sawa. I'm ready for Devon Sawa to continue this trend of working with rock stars turned directors. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like he did Fred Durst's movie, The Fanatic.
Right.
I actually think that movie has a lot of merit. I think that that's kind of a great little indie underground gem. Like I love that movie actually. And then you got Danzig with this one. I mean, there's only one place left to go, Devon, and that's Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm sure he's trying to get in touch with him at this moment. Like it's got
Rob Zombie's trying to get in touch with him or vice versa.
Yeah. I think Rob Zombie's trying to get in touch with him because I mean he's perfect for his movies. So
I like to picture it like that old McDonald's commercial where the two old fishermen each find out that there's a new sandwich and they keep trying to call each other. Do you remember that commercial?
No.
And they get the busy signal. And they're like, ugh. And you're like, they're never gonna get their sandwiches. That's
the golden age of advertising right there for sure.
Yeah, the grumpier old men era.
Oh my god. Well, I'll go ahead and do the finished puzzle here and we'll get into some closing thoughts. But we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly from Dusk Till Dawn, the entire trilogy. Bordello of Blood, Innocent Blood, Young Frankenstein, Zachariah, and the Grindhouse movie. Joe, are there any things that we didn't quite get to that you wanted to bring up here?
No. I think that the movie speaks for itself, and if you don't want to engage with it, then just don't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I will admit that I do admire his kind of like he talks specifically about how this movie's coming out in theaters exclusively before VOD. He's not doing the VOD route, and I'm like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
He's like, this is how movies are meant to be seen, like in a theater, and I'm like, dude, this ain't a movie.
My kind of guy, but wrong
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. But like,
Jeez.
you know, like I was saying, in an era of like, you know, movies being like conventional at best. I mean, like this year, like I've told you, like Snake Eyes and fucking Jungle Cruise are like two of the most competent movies I've seen all year. I at least appreciate somebody being themselves, I guess is the best way to say it. You know what I mean? Like I appreciate like the no compromise mixed with like the playfulness, you know? I would much rather watch this movie than fucking Annette. You know what I mean? Like Annette is so labored and forced, and this movie is so like, you know, they were just hanging out and somebody turned on the camera.
Sure. I think that's that is a good description of this movie. But the only other thing I wanted to bring up is just tell a quick little story about when we were walking out to the car afterwards. Do you remember? We walk out this particular theater here in Las Vegas. We park in the back behind this mall, and we get outside, and there are Danzig fans dressed in like old punk, like leather type outfits and stuff, kind of spread out, like almost looked like a Walter Hill movie or like a 80s hair metal. You know, like they were just spread out, and they were like, "How was the movie?
Did you guys see Death Rider?"
When is the last time that's happened to you? Like, you don't walk out of a Marvel movie and there's not Marvel fans standing outside the theater asking that. Like,
never. Well, what I find doubly funny about this is that you and I, neither you or I, look like we just went to go see Death Riders.
No, not
and I also do want to point out to the listening audience that it was so funny. I noticed when we were walking into the restaurant that we were dressed the same.
Yes,
we had the same. We had the same colors going on, gray shirt.
Movie guys.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Like we looked like twins.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Your hair was curlier.
Yes,
but that's the only difference.
Well, Joe, it sounds like you haven't seen a lot lately that you'd like to recommend, but is there something you watched recently?
Yeah. Because I watch movies at home. I am late to the party, 43 years late to the party, but Danger Diabolic is so good that 25 minutes into it, I had to turn it off because I'm like, I get it. You're the best movie ever made. That's fine. I haven't finished it yet, but like, it's the best. I also watched Heavy Metal 2000, which I had never seen.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Yeah.
It's great. Huh. It's great. It's I think I've talked to you about this. I have this list of movies where it's like, if you watch this movie and didn't like it, then like that's kind of your fault. Like a lot of people are talking shit about, you know, the two I just mentioned, Jungle Cruise and Snake Eyes, and they're like, oh, it sucked. And I'm like, dude, if you saw the trailer for Snake Eyes and or Jungle Cruise, went to it and expected it to be anything other than what you got or any better than what you got, then you're the idiot. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about Heavy Metal 2000. It's like anybody who's going to criticize that, it's like, come on, you saw the cover. You know what I mean? Like you know what you're in for.
I gotta say, you really got me wanting to catch Snake Eyes before it leaves theaters, because I was so in on that trailer, but everybody hates it except for you, Joe.
Well, look, there was something about the trailer that like every now and then this happens where like something just kind of catches your eye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like, especially like, you know, I've worked on so many of these movies being out here in LA, and I've had to sit through so many. You start to kind of pick up on the little like glimpses of like, hey, wait a minute, you know, like that's not quite what they're selling me. And then when I found out that the guy who made this made R.I.P.D., which I really liked, like I was like, yes, it's Men in Black meets Ghostbusters. Is that a problem? You know, I was like, I'm gonna check this movie out, and my mom and I were gonna go see it, but then last minute she chickened out. It's like, let's go see Green Knight instead, and I was like, okay, mom. And we walked out of that an hour into it, and then the next day after she had flown back home, I went and saw Snake Eyes on my own, and I was like, see, I told you, mom. Because look, it's just I wouldn't even call it paint by numbers because there's actually a couple really good twists. That's what I'll say about it, is that like I liked what it had to say, even though it wasn't necessarily saying anything new, but I liked where its morals and its, lied. It had a couple of fun twists that I really enjoyed, and it was competently made. And the action sequences that everybody's criticizing, I actually thought were kind of brilliant because yes, they are handheld, but it's not the Jason Bourne handheld that you're thinking. Like these are choreographed like a John Wick fight, like in the way that they're cut, but they're shot handheld. So like the John Wick, we're so attuned to it now because everybody's doing that kind of action that like we know what to expect in these sequences. We kind of know the rhythm of these sequences now. But adding this kind of handheld element to that rhythm really kind of threw you for a loop and created some really great surprises for me. And like it's a sad state of cinema where like in fucking August, Snake Eyes is in my top 5, let alone top 20. You know what I mean? It's not that Snake Eyes is amazing, but Snake Eyes is one of the few times, and by few I mean 2.5 times, that I've gone to a movie this summer or this year and just been like, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
What was the half? 2.5?
Well, I mean, Godzilla.
Okay.
But like, here's the thing: is that second half was so good that it's a full meal. I mean that. Gotcha. You know what I mean? I think I talked about that on our episode. That like, I also do want to say that it's really funny that like I said on the last episode that I did 2 big blockbusters in a row, which was really surprising, and like the next one better cost less than $1 million, and I think we did it.
I think we did it. Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way that this movie cost more than $1 million.
Oh, that's a good note to end it on. Joe, why don't you tell people where they can find you and what you're up to?
Hopefully in Vegas soon for a screening. My company is Blue Means Pregnant Films, and if you go to bluemeanspregnantfilms.com, you can watch all of our features and shorts for free. They're just there for you to watch. I also have like little making of. It's the whole journey, cinematic journey I and my team and family and friends have been on for the last 16 years are on this website. And we just completed our newest film and we premiered it in Tasha Hall. We premiered it on the same street that Danzig premiered Death Riders.
Nice.
A couple of weeks ago. And it was our biggest turnout yet. Got some great feedback about the movie, and we're gonna hopefully have a screening in Vegas sometime soon, and then a couple other places where we have friends and family throughout the second half of the year. So
awesome. Well, Joe, thank you again for being here for the 200th episode of Piecing It Together, and I look forward, as always, to getting you back on the show again sometime.
Beyond honored. See you for the next Rebecca Hall, Lady Gaga, and or Ben Affleck movie.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Death Rider in the House of Vampires from Glenn Danzig. What a movie. You guys got to see it. It's out now in theaters, as Joe pointed out. Danzig was very particular about this being a theatrical release, which is amazing. I do love that, although now maybe is not quite the time, especially for a movie like this. But anyway, check it out when you do get a chance to see it. It's ridiculous. And thank you to Joe for joining me for that episode. And again, this is episode 200. Thank you to everyone who has been listening all this time. To all the new listeners, thank you so much for being there. Make sure to go back and check out some of the other episodes on movies that you've seen before, so we could deep dive into the movies that may have inspired them. So you could subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you're listening right now, you could subscribe there or check us out on any of the major podcast apps. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or Good Pods, and we really appreciate your feedback, especially the 5-star reviews. But any kind of feedback, I really appreciate seeing, so please do that. And also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join our Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. We also have a Produced by David Rosen Patreon with content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. Lots of great content over there, so check that out if you really love what we're doing here on the show and want to throw a little support our way. So let's close this thing out with a piece of music like I always do, and I have the perfect piece of music to close this one. This is the score for a little animated film that I scored. Man, must have been 2013 or 14. This is from a long time ago, but it is this spaghetti western type of thing. It was animated, but definitely the music I think would fit just as well as what Danzig put together for the music in this movie. So hope you enjoy this piece of music. The film is called Wasteland. It's not really available to watch anywhere, although there's a clip of it in my reel on my website, bydavidrosen.com. If you check out the reel of some of the things I've worked on, there's a clip in there. But yeah, enjoy it. The piece is called Wasteland. Maybe it'll come out at some point on a compilation album that I've been mentioning that I'm going to put out one of these days. I don't know when that's going to be, but if I ever do put that album out, this will probably end up on there. So yeah, this is called Wasteland. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together coming out real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.